Keep it. There's no limit on it.
Auntie,
Auntie? Look at me. Do I look like somebody's auntie to you?
He's nervous. They're always nervous at first. Don't worry, baby. By the time we are done with you, you won't even remember being nervous.
To fresh beginnings.
Fresh beginnings.
There is a kind of wealth that does not come from hard work. There is a kind of beauty that does not come from nature. And there is a kind of power that comes with a price. Welcome to the city of Lagos, the city of noise, the city of hustle, the city that never sleeps. And in this city, there are things that move in the shadows. Things that smile at you with red lips and gold jewelry. Things that call you baby and pour you expensive wine. Things that look like women but are far more dangerous than anything you have ever seen. This is the story of three of those things. This is the story of the Lagos Sugar Mummy. And this is what happened when they chose the wrong man. Pull your chair closer. This story I am about to tell will teach you something. But first, like this video, subscribe and tell me where you are watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Now, come closer. Lagos is a city that rewards boldness. If you are bold enough, Lagos will give you everything. Money, power, a name that people whisper with both fear and admiration. Lagos does not ask how you got your riches. Lagos only asks, do you have them? And so, in the highest towers of Victoria Island, behind the walls of Ikoyi mansions, inside the VIP section of the most expensive clubs on the mainland, three women ruled. Their names were Mrs. Adaeze, Mrs. Ronke, and Mrs. Chiamaka. Women in their 50s, but you would never know it. Their skins were smooth, like they had made a deal with time itself, which, as you will soon discover, they had. Their hair were always expensive and perfect. Their clothes were always imported. Their cars were always the latest model. Their perfume arrived before they did, and it lingered long after they left. The people of Lagos called them the Lagos Sugar Mummies. And oh, how they loved that name. They wore it like a crown. To the public, they were successful business women. Widows who had inherited wealth and multiplied it, philanthropists who donated to charities and appeared on pages of lifestyle magazines, women who had lived life fully and refused to apologize for it. But what the public did not know, what the cameras never captured, what no magazine ever printed, was the truth behind the sugar. You see, the Lagos Sugar Mummies had a secret. Every young man they brought into their world, every fresh-faced, wide-eyed boy who had not yet seen the full weight of this world, left the world a little less than he arrived. Not broken in a way you could see, not broken in a way a doctor could diagnose, but broken in a way that mattered. His light would dim, his glory would fade, his ambitions would fall flat like a candle in rain. That business idea he had, gone. That talent he carried since childhood, gone. That fire in his eyes, gone. And into the calabash of the sugar mummies, all of it would flow. Their wealth fed by the solid futures of the young men. Their beauties preserved by the drained vitality of boys who thought they had found luck, but had actually walked into a trap. For many years, this continued. and nobody knew. Nobody knew until the day they met a man named Femi. On the other side of Lagos, far from the campaign and the chandeliers, there lived a man named Femi Adeyemi. Femi was not a rich man, but he was a good man. He worked at one of the biggest banks in Lagos, a banking officer who came to work every day in his pressed shirt and his clean shoes, doing his job with a kind of quiet dignity that does not make headlines but holds the world together. He had a wife named Grace. Grace Adeyemi was a woman whose name suited her perfectly. She was gentle, she was warm, she was the kind of woman whose presence made a room feel safe. She ran a small fashion studio in Lagos. Nothing grand, but it was hers, built with her own hands, her own creativity, and her own prayers. And Grace prayed. Oh, she prayed. Every morning before the sun rose, Grace was on her knees. Her Bible was worn out at the edges because she reads it, not just carried it. She dragged her husband Femi to church every Sunday, practically pulling him by the collar through the doors while he grumbled under his breath about pastors and prosperity gospels and the price of fuel to get there. Femi did not believe in God, not in a way that Grace did. These pastors are businessmen, he would say. God does not need your offering money. He created good. But Grace would smile at him, that patient, knowing smile, and say, one day, Femi, one day, you will understand why God is the greatest. Together, they had built a life, not a flashy life, not a life that anyone would write a song about, but a real life, a warm life, a life with laughter in the kitchen, an argument over the remote control, and Sunday afternoon rice, and the beautiful chaos of raising a child. Their daughter was named Tammy. Tammy was 5 years old, and she was everything. She had her father's eyes and her mother's smile. She came home from school every day with stories, bursting through the door, school bag bouncing on her back, launching into a full report of everything she had learned and seen and heard, barely stopping to breathe. She laughed easily and loved freely and filled every corner of their small apartment with light. The Adeyemis were what Nigerians call an average family. Not poor, not rich, but in between, making it work, grateful for what they had. And then, one day, Temi got sick. It started as what seemed like a simple cold. A cough here, fatigue there, a temperature that refused to come down. But when Grace took her to the hospital, the doctors did not look reassured. They ran tests, they murmured among themselves, they ran more tests. And then they called Mr. and Mrs. Adeyemi into an office, and a doctor sat across from them with a face that told them before he even opened his mouth that the news was not good. Your daughter, the doctor said carefully, has a heart condition. It has likely been developing for some time without showing obvious symptoms, but we are now at a point where it requires urgent attention. He paused. She needs surgery within the next 2 weeks. The room went silent. Femi stared at the wall. Grace held Temi's photographs in her hands. She had brought it from her phone, the way a mother does when she goes somewhere scary and needs something to hold on to. How? Femi started. He stopped. He tried again. How did this happen? She has never been sick. She is always healthy. These things can develop silently, the doctor said gently. The important thing now is the surgery. There was another pause. What is the cost? Femi asked. The doctor folded his hands on the desk. The full cost of the surgery and post-operative care is 50 million naira. The silence that followed was a different kind of silence. It was the silence of a world collapsing. We will need at least 30 million deposited before we can begin, the doctor added. We can work out a payment plan for the balance. but the initial deposit must be in place. Femi and Grace walked out of that office and stood in the hospital corridor, and neither of them could speak. 50 million naira. Their total savings, years of careful putting aside, of denying themselves small luxuries, of telling themselves next year, did not even reach 5 million. That night, Femi did not sleep. He lay on his back in the dark and stared at the ceiling and did the kind of mathematics that has no solution. No matter how he arranged the numbers, they did not reach 50 million. In the days that followed, Femi and Grace moved through Lagos like two people carrying an invisible weight. They went to their families, uncles, aunties, cousins, in-laws. They explained the situation with trembling voices and hopeful eyes. They came back with sympathy and prayer and a fraction of what they needed. Some people gave what they could, others turned away, embarrassed by their own inability to help. They went to friends, the results were the same. Femi went to the bank, the very bank where he worked, where he had given years of loyal service, and applied for an emergency loan. The manager called him into his office and spoke quietly. The bank was in the middle of a regulatory audit. They were not processing personal loans above a certain amount. The timing was wrong. Maybe in a few months he could get the loan. I don't have a few months, Femi said. He walked out. One evening, he sat at his daughter's hospital bedside. Temi was asleep, tubes attached, monitors beeping softly. She looked so small in that bed, so fragile. This child who was never supposed to be fragile, who had entered every room of his life like a hurricane of joy, was lying there still and quiet. Beside him, Grace sat with her eyes closed and her lips moving, saying silent prayers, continuous and unbroken. She had become thinner in just a few weeks. The worry had taken something from her face, but even in her exhaustion, there was a steadiness in Grace that Femi could not explain. A kind of calm that should not have been possible given what they were facing. Femi's phone buzzed. It was Tunde, his old friend from university. One of those Lagos boys who always seem to know people and things and shortcuts. I have found a way. Come and see me. It can solve everything. Femi stared at the message for a long time. Then he kissed his daughter gently on the forehead, told Grace he would be back soon, and went. Tunde's apartment was in Lekki. He opened the door with a grin that Femi was not in the mood to match. Sit down, my guy, Tunde said, pouring a drink Femi did not ask for. I have a solution to your problem. Then tell me, Femi said. I have no time. Tunde leaned forward. You have heard of the Lagos Sugar Mummies, right? Femi's expression did not change. Yes, I have. Those women are loaded, my brother. Loaded like government contractor loaded. They spend freely on the right kind of men. And you? Tunde pointed at him with emphasis. You are exactly their type. Tall, clean, and fine. You don't have to do anything terrible. Just spend some time with them. Give them your company. A night or two. That 50 million naira problem will disappear like it was never there. Are you serious? His voice was low, but it carried everything. The sleepless nights, the humiliation of begging, the burning shame of a father who could not protect his child, all of it compressed into those three words. You are telling me to go and prostitute myself? Me, a married man, to betray my wife who is sitting in that hospital right now, praying for our daughter so that I can crawl into the beds of three women I did not know? Femi, calm down, Today said calmly. Have you forgotten I have a wife? The volume rose. Have you forgotten who I am? Femi left without finishing the sentence. He drove home angry. He was angry the rest of that night. He was angry the next day and the day after that. He told himself there was another way. There had to be another way. He would find it. He was still the head of his family. He was still a man of honor. He would find another way. But the days kept passing. and no other way appeared. And then the doctor called them back into the office. I want to be honest with you, the doctor said. Femi's condition is deteriorating. Whatever you are doing to raise the funds, you need to move faster. We are running out of time. Femi looked at his wife. Grace sat beside him, her hands folded in her laps, tears sliding silently down cheeks that had grown hollow. She did not make a sound, she just sat there, breaking quietly, the way strong people break without drama, without collapse, but with a visible kind of pain that is worse than screaming. Femi looked at her for a long time. He thought of Temi describing her school day, that unstoppable mouth, that infectious laugh. He thought of Grace on her knees every morning, praying. He thought of himself, the promises he had made at the altar, the man he had wanted to be, the father he had sworn to be. He thought of it all. And then he picked up his phone and called Today. Today coached him thoroughly. They only want young men who are unattached. No wives, no serious girlfriends. Don't mention Grace. Don't mention Temi. As far as they are concerned, you are a free man. Young, single, and fine, that's all. Femi took off his wedding ring. He held it in his palm for a moment. This small circle of gold that meant everything. Then he put it in his pocket. He dressed simply. Dark trousers, a fitted shirt. He did not need to try hard. Today was right about one thing. Femi was naturally striking. The kind of man whose looks do not require effort. Sharp jaw, clear skin, easy confidence. Even in his grief, even carrying the weight of everything he was carrying, he walked into that bar in Victoria Island and turned heads before he reached the door. The bouncer found him almost immediately. The ladies would like your company, the man said simply. VIP section. Femi followed him through the noise and the smoke and the music, through the curtains and past bodies, until he was standing in a private lounge where the lights were low and the air smelled of something expensive. And there they were, Mrs. Adaize, Mrs. Ronke, and Mrs. Chiamaka. 3 women draped in wealth, watching him with the calm, assessing eyes of predators who have never once been surprised. They were beautiful in the way that something dangerous can be beautiful. Their jewelry caught the lights. Their smiles were practiced and perfectly calibrated. They held their glasses of wine like weapons disguised as accessories. Come, come, Miss Ronke said, passing the seat beside her. Sit. He looked like he needed a drink. They fussed over him. They admired him openly. His cheekbones, his skin, his build, with a kind of unashamed complimentaries that made Femi's skin crawl, even as he kept his face still and played his part. Are you married? Mrs. Adeize asked, not even pretending it was casual. No, Femi said. Mrs. Chiamaka smiled slowly. She reached across and touched his hand. This was their ritual. This was how they confirmed what they wanted to know. One touched and they could feel the spiritual signature of a man married or free, protected or exposed, safe or dangerous. She touched Femi's hand and felt nothing. She frowned, almost imperceptibly. She touched again, still nothing. The channel was silent. No spiritual vibration, no echo of a wife's prayer covering, no mark of a covenant. She glanced at her companions. Mrs. Adaize touched him next. Same result. Mrs. Ronke, same. They saw nothing. They exchanged looks. In any other situation, this blankness would have been a warning, a sign to retreat. Their instincts had been built over decades of practice, and the instincts said, something is wrong. This man is blocked. Leave him. But Femi was too beautiful, and the Sugar Mummies had not survived this long by being cautious. They had survived by being bold. We like you very much, Mrs. Adaize said, leaning forward. We are proposing 100 million naira. You spend the night with us? And if the money goes the way we hope, she smiled, another 50 million naira before you leave. 150 million naira. Femi looked at their faces. He thought of Temi. He thought of Grace. Then he agreed. The night passed. When the morning light came through the curtains of the hotel suite, Femi rose quietly and dressed. His mind was somewhere else entirely, with his daughter, with his wife, with the man he had been yesterday, and the question of who he was now. He searched for all his belongings, his shirt, his shoes, and his phones. He could not find his boxer shorts. He looked around the room briefly. The women were still sleeping, draped across the enormous bed like decorations. He did not want to wake them. He did not want to spend one more second in that room. So he left. He did not know that the missing boxer was not missing by accident. 150 million naira arrived in his account as promised. Femi drove straight to the hospital. He walked to the accounts department and began the process of depositing the surgery funds. 30 million first, as agreed. The rest to follow. The hospital staff moved with new efficiency. The surgeon was summoned. The theater was prepared. That afternoon, Temi was wheeled into the operating room. Femi and Grace sat in the corridor outside, side by side, in the kind of silence that only two people who deeply love each other can share. Grace's hand was in his. Her lips were moving, quietly and ceaselessly. Femi stared at the floor. He had done something he could not undo, but his daughter's life matters. That was what he told himself. 3 hours later, the surgeon came through the doors. The surgery was successful. He said, "Your daughter is stable. She is going to be okay." Grace made a sound that is impossible to describe. The release of a prayer answered. The collapse of a fear held too long. She covered her mouth and wept. And Femi held her. And for a moment, everything else fell away. 2 days later, Temi was awake. Femi walked into her room and found her sitting up, chatting with her mother, already back to being herself, animated, bright-eyed, and full of things to say. "Daddy!" she shouted when she saw him. He went inside and kissed both Grace and Temi on the cheek. "Daddy," Temi said, pulling his hand with both of hers. "I had a dream, a big dream." "Tell me," Femi said. "I saw angels, Daddy, real ones. And then I saw Jesus. It was so nice. He took me to walk in a garden, and everything was white and green and beautiful. And then he showed me a door, and he said, 'Your mommy and your daddy are waiting for you on the other side.' And then I woke up." Femi looked at his daughter's face. Then he looked at Grace. Grace was watching him with soft, knowing eyes. He said nothing, but something cracked open inside him. On the same day that Temi was waking up in a hospital bed, something different was happening in the Sugar Mummies mansion.